Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram language design review session, part of our language completeness and consistency series. All right, we supposedly have three topics. I bet they won't be simple. First one is about the where to store things interface. Okay.
Right. So there are four bullet points here, which are all sort of dance around this issue, but they're distinct points. Yeah, right. So we have So audio has this, choose where to store the thing,
Okay, let's just set the basic point here. Basic point is we've got a bunch of output forms that, and they are all output forms, I think, initially, that might or might not actually store the goods, so to speak, inside them.
Yep.
And there are a bunch where I could just copy it and paste it somewhere and use it as input because it has the goods inside it, or that it has a reference to the goods. And other cases where it's like, sorry, it's just a picture. Is that correct?
Well, I think. I don't think audio really falls into that category, right? I mean, it's never just a picture, I don't think.
But by that I mean, okay. So look, audio is a very bad case because, okay, the issue is.
I mean, the first three fall into that category, right? That thing may or may not store the data, whereas audio always stores the data.
No, it doesn't.
Sure, audio, it does.
It specifically doesn't store the data. It has a pointer to a file that stores the data.
Well, but it still knows the name of that file.
Right, but it never actually stores the data. I can never pick this up and copy it and paste it into a new session. Well, okay.
Yes, sorry, you absolutely can.
No. I know that, but this is the gotcha here. I can't send it to somebody else and have it ever work.
Well, but you can choose to store it in the notebook.
Well, no, I can't in this.
Yes.
There is the Encore version for the audio object.
See the little store icon?
This one here.
Yep.
Yes. That we introduced only like 3 months ago, and you were very excited about.
Yes. Okay, fine. Does it have a mouse over? Yes, it does. Okay. I guess I mean, so long as we can teach people that icon means storage. Okay, so yes, I agree. This is really good. Store in notebooks, store in the cloud, store in the private cloud.
Right.
That's really good.
Right. So So one item.
I'm sorry. I'm going to ask something else. Why does this not have store as a local object?
Because that is just a file, which is exactly what this already is.
No. I know that, but I might want it in my. Just think about the following thing. My local object store might be something accessible from multiple computers. It might be this, that, and the other. This is a file.
If we decide that is useful, we can add it easily.
I think it's useful because I think it's something we should standardize. I think we should standardize on this. We should standardize on what we're doing for all of these, because I think audio is rather special in just having a randomly scattered file be usable. Right? Most of these other things don't have that. Like, for example, here,
right.
Here.
Well, you need to evaluate it in this session, right?
I understand that. Okay, well, here, let me do that. Okay. Okay. So now this only offers me to store the expression in the notebook. It's not offering me other alternatives.
Right. Yes. I mean, there's the Iconize option next to it, but yes.
Can I argue why we might want these same options for this as well? Does that make sense? Store it in the cloud doesn't seem completely stupid to me. Why is there? Go ahead.
I would like Lou to opine. I feel like there was some issue with the fact. but maybe not.
I mean, are large outputs specifically or uniquely things that you want to be able to store elsewhere? Or
No,
is this something you want to do with
what I'm
arbitrary?
suggesting is that every large thing, okay, have this option that allows you to make it, okay, if it's in the notebook, you can send the notebook and, you know, it's all good, right? If it's not in the notebook, for whatever reason, you might want some way that you could have global access to it. John Fultz, do you want to comment on this?
Right. So I mean, why don't you go ahead and click on it, right? Because this is, I feel like, is a little bit different from the other guys, just in terms of the behavior. And maybe this is purely a historical accident, right?
I know this is why we're talking about it here, because I don't think it should be different. I think we need to standardize how this works.
Let me finish my sentence, please, Stephen.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Right. And so what did the right. So if you click on that one and embed in notebook.
Okay, so it says embed inline in notebook. Is that what it says here? No, it's got different wording. Come on, guys.
Yeah, the wording is different because the operation is different, right? This is what we were saying before. That output firm is a failure in the case of sparse array, but is a perfectly valid one in the audio case. If you look at the input firm of the audio, is just audio file. The data there is the file.
No,
so
it's not. It's not.
No, this is embed, right? No. This is taking exactly percent and sticking percent in there, which is quite different from what the button in the audio, where it's taking something which is not percent and replacing that output there.
I see what you're saying.
It is dramatically changing the input form of the thing.
Well, right, but I don't think the wording is quite right, because I think store a notebook, it should say embed data directly in notebook or something.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. But I mean, this wording here, embed inline in notebook, is awfully similar to, you know, this could say embed inline in notebook and be reasonable, couldn't it?
The problem is embed one, right? It is unclear because the audio object is already correct and a valid input firm. It as you said, embed data is a bit more explicit in what it would do.
Or maybe import and embed.
Yeah, something along those lines, even though it's a bit awkward.
You still hear me? How did this? Yeah, okay. My Zoom is confused. Okay. Well, okay, so there's wording there, but I just want to clarify. There are many different places here where it seems to me, maybe somebody can correct this, that all of the storage locations make sense.
Probably.
I mean, I think the case of the big, you know, the big output, it's not crazy to do that. As a matter of fact, it's very much not crazy. I would have, you know what, now that I think about it, storing it in the cloud would have been a big win, would be a big win for lots of things I want to do. I hadn't had that idea that one could do that. But it would actually be useful to do that.
I guess the question is, what would it look like once you've done that? Right.
It would have the same preview that it's stored in here, but its backing would be the cloud.
That's certainly not what we do in the summary box case, right? We indicate where it's stored. Right.
Sorry, which case? If I do this, store to the, let's say I do this now and I say store, oh, this says store in local object. Okay. What the hell? This doesn't allow me to do the public cloud versus private cloud. This is very confused, guys.
Well, it's older, right? I mean, we didn't have that idea.
So let's just pull this out here. Okay, that's that one.
You want to right click and show actual size. Well, okay, fine.
Okay, that's shoot. I managed to mouse over that, but okay. What other cases are there of this menu? Is this different or is this the same?
That one does not have
Any options other than
right.
okay, so we've got a big, this is a quintessential LCC problem.
Right.
Because this store now does something different from this store now.
Well, no.
Yes,
So,
it does. Look, gives a menu.
Okay, fine, but that's a trivial distinction. I mean, originally, and I'm actually suggesting we change the wording there, right? Because it says data not in notebook store now, but 2 out of the 3 or 3 out of the 4, if we split the cloud into 2, will not actually store it in the notebook. So we should probably say something like data not saved or data not stored.
Yes.
Stored now.
Yeah, right.
Okay. I have a preference between those two.
Let's think about it. Let's try and look at all the cases, okay? So first point is, we're agreeing, I think, we have a lot of sort of iconic forms that don't store the data right now. We want to get to the point where every iconic form that doesn't actually have the data stored has an option to store the data. Do we agree?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I got a little lost in the sentence.
Okay. What I'm saying is, we want it to be the case that everything where it's sort of an iconic form that isn't, okay. Anything which is an
basically, you're
iconic,
saying we want to make every non-interpretable iconic form interpretable.
or have the option to have it be interpretable, yes.
Okay. I mean,
in other words,
I don't think that's an absolute rule because, you know, of various data structures, et cetera. But
I kind of agree with you, yeah. But as a general principle,
so, yes.
Okay, and I think also when it isn't interpretable, I think it should behave in a uniform way.
Yep.
Okay, so now let's discuss basically what I would like to do is let's enumerate all the cases where we have these, you know, non-locally, you know, not locally stored things. Question 1. Question 2, what are they presenting right now? And then idea, you know, then the concept would be, we'll take the best practices of everything we see and make that the standard.
So, I mean, unless you want to include video, which has no in notebook form, I believe this is the complete list.
Okay.
I mean, right,
So,
I mean, right. Of course, there are 5,000 different things that use summary boxes, but they're all going through this centralized mechanism. So sparse array is a representative of.
What's another example?
What's that?
What is interpolating function another example?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
And let me make the distinction once again that we've already touched on. There are two flavors of this. One is where the output is non-valid and non-reconstructible anymore. In the other one, the resource might not be accessible. And these are, I think, and in the second flavor is the one that audio and video belong to.
I don't think they're as different as you think. Because imagine that I stored my interpolating function in the cloud.
Sure.
Okay. And then I can't access that cloud file. I'm in the same. Now, the only difference with audio and video is that you think things will be strewn around the file system.
Yep.
Okay. Now, it is not self-evidently obvious that, I don't think it makes sense for interpolation. It's not self-evidently obvious that sparse array, a file of, some sparse array format shouldn't work. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then it would be the same in the same, bucket as the audio case.
No,
I feel like that is not.
Because if you generate your own sparse array as a result of computation, it'll be that.
I understand that, but I'm saying that with audio, if you generate your audio, okay, right now as an efficiency hack, even audio generated within the system is outsourced to a file to be stored, correct?
Not in all cases. It could be in the notebook because of these two different modalities, in-core and out-of-core. In the in-core, all the data is the input in the input form.
But what I'm claiming is there's really no difference between the case of, if I said, I don't know what the sparse array formats are. There's let me call it, sparse array, a file of, matrix dot, sparse matrix or whatever it is. I don't remember what the format names are. Maybe somebody here. I bet Rob knows. Is Rob here? Rob knows the actual name.
Oh, I don't even remember. There's a .mat format. There's a.
No, that's not sparse array.
Yeah.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's from that matrix market thing, I think.
MMX matrix market, whatever it is. I don't know. What it is.
Right.
Just make it up.
Or Boeing, and I can't even remember the extension for that.
Okay. All right. Fine. Okay. All right, fine. I don't feel so bad now that you didn't know that, but that's okay. But we will get the point. This could be an external large file, right? Does that make sense to people? I mean,
but is that, and are you envisioning that working like audio in an out-of-core fashion or importing the stuff? And
who knows? I mean,
this is why I'm saying audio has an immediate difference with stuff that exists already. This could work as in the same way. There's no reason why it shouldn't, but at the moment,
but I mean, if we were using Leonid's chunking, out of core chunking mechanism, we could easily have functions that take things like this.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that the implementation of sparse array is an out of core implementation right now.
Yeah. No, I understand. The only difference that the only claim that I'm making is that the input form for one will be valid, the other one won't.
And my claim is that there are dozens of summary boxes throughout the system, and some of them this file thing will just not make sense unless.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not pushing it particularly hard. I'm okay, but I'm going to push a different thing here. Okay, the main thing that is weird and perhaps wrong, okay, about audio and video is that these other things perfectly happily have local object files. They don't. I'm sorry?
That is a possible option for video.
No, I understand that. But what you're doing, if I just create, okay, let me do something very straightforward here, because I'm about to prove why this is horrifying. Okay. Hello, computer. Are you hearing me? Okay, where is that file? Okay, that is just flamingly crazy.
So we have ways to control that, right?
I don't care.
I mean, I disagree with that assertion.
That it's flamingly crazy?
Yes.
I also don't think that is particularly crazy.
Okay.
Right, it's in your documents directory, right? You created a file, it goes into your documents directory. That is a completely standard behavior of applications.
Although for us, the local object store is the place we traditionally store and can manage, right? Because we can get a list of local objects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I may have accumulated all kinds of CRUD in this, and I know many applications do this to accumulate CRUD in the documents directory.
Well, another thing is actually, at least on Mac OS now, certain directories like downloads, and I think documents, when an application accesses them from the first time, a dialog comes up saying, do you want to allow it to access your whatever folder? And for one, I mean, that dialogue is kind of annoying. So maybe if it can be avoided, that would be good. But also, I don't know what happens to this functionality if they say no. Does just audio just kind of break if they say no?
That might be the case.
Okay, we should check that. Does John or Lou or anybody know?
Doesn't it revert to temporary directory? I thought we had code in place that if we can't access documents, we go to $temporary directory.
But I don't think that fallback is in place for audio.
So that's probably wrong. But,
right, but the other right. I mean, the flip side of that is if you want to, actually make use of that MP3 or WAV, whatever type of file it created there, right, you want to stick it into your, into your iMovie project. Well, documents is findable in the Finder, whereas library is not. Library is a hidden directory now.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, this is
but I mean, at the same time, the same could be said of images or something. And normally you expect you'll have to export them yourself.
Right. And in this case,
why would you care where this is?
For what?
That's what I'm saying, is that maybe it's. I mean, that would be the argument for putting it in some like local object store or something, is to say there's no reason a user should ever have to look at the raw file. So just put it in some corner where they'll never see it.
I mean, that's fair. And then you're expecting the user, if they want to use it outside the system, to do export of that audio object, is what you're saying.
Yes, which seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Now, maybe one other concern though would be that suppose a user has like 20 gigabytes of videos and audio in these folders. Then that would be an argument for them having, making them visible so that a user can clear them out, as opposed to being in some obscure, bizarre place.
Well, maybe that forces us to have a good management system for the local object store, which I wouldn't mind seeing. Maybe that, when we have notifiers working, we could easily have a notifier that says, where it says your local object store now has 100 gigabytes in it. Do you want to do something about it? I mean, we're going to have to manage this stuff somehow, because I have no idea, like my local object store, I have no idea how big it is. And it would be good if I knew.
I feel like managing the local object store is just as hopeless as managing $documents directory when, every file name is a UUID.
Well, okay, but my point is,
and again, with Finder, you can at least do things like, go in, and I suppose we could invent interfaces with for local objects, right? But of course, with
why don't we just have you be able to open the Finder?
With a file, right? With a file browser, I could go in and sort by date or whatever.
Yes, but why don't we do that for the local object store? It's just a file system, isn't it? It's just files. It's nothing.
It's not just files.
It isn't?
No.
Yes, it is.
No. It's a directory. Every local object is a directory with at least 2 files.
Okay. Well, isn't that nice? It probably means that it's annotatable. Probably means it has some metadata. But in terms of just the pure how big is it and what were the dates, the directory will do fine. It'll sort just fine. And we could open a browser on the, one of the things you could do is with, I don't know, we could have some local object browse or something function where you open a browser on the local object store, which seems somewhat useful to me. I think we should build management for the local object store. I mean, unless we're going to kill the local object store and just spray files all over people that use the file systems, I think we should have a management system for the local object store.
I've been wanting to have storage management for audio, video files that we create under this user document directory, because it's just growing large. But
right,
if we
so
have it
don't
for
do
a local,
it. So that's what I'm saying. Don't do it. Don't invent another system. I noticed that Fnorp on our live stream is commenting. It seems a bit rude if the program silently writes files to folders the user regards as under their control, like the documents directory. Well, yes. I mean, lots of programs do it, but yes, it is kind of rude. I strongly favor centralizing all this stuff in the local object store. That was what we built it for. We can have management system for it. We should figure out how to do that. We should, we should share the management of large objects that go there from, let me be clear about another thing. I mean, where does it go in the cloud by default? Does it go into a UUID in the cloud? I think it does, doesn't it? The default cloud storage here,
it's just a UUID, and that's another thing I noticed that we might be able to improve. Just it might be nice to have them all grouped in one folder or something.
Maybe. I mean, the alternative would be a management system for local objects and cloud objects that allows you to do that grouping dynamically. I mean, the alternative, okay,
based on type and date and things like that, you were thinking?
For example, but I mean, the alternative would be that everything, audio, video, well, okay, I'm gonna make an argument and I'm gonna shoot it down. Okay. My argument would be perhaps we want something where sparse array, big output, et cetera, all have their own subdirectories in wherever the storage bin is. Okay, that's my argument. Now my anti-argument is, okay, are we going to have a separate one for audio capture and for audio? How do we bin these things? I think it's hopeless. Right, so then what we could do is have something where in the metadata, it knows what function created it, audio capture versus audio versus whatever else, and then have a management view where you can see what were all the creation functions for all the things that wound up in the local object store or the cloud object store.
So I'm not sure I totally understand the distinction, but I think there would be value in having the actual directory structure of the local store, have structure instead of just being a bunch of UUIDs, because otherwise what I think is going to happen is that people are going to say, or like this would happen to me, is I would say, I'd scan my hard drive and say, this folder is using 100 gigabytes. And I just see a bunch of indistinguishable UUIDs and I delete them all. When it might be better if I can see, oh, well, it's all my videos are taking up all my space. And I just delete that folder. And then I don't lose those sparse arrays and stuff.
Well, so different programs obviously have different conventions about this. Some do things based on date. Some do things based on UUID. I agree that having the real question is, if every local object is a directory, that means it has metadata in it. In addition to its content, it has metadata. Yep. But the question is, what Christopher is asserting is that file system level visibility of the types of things can be useful. And I don't disagree about that. Okay. However, the alternative is that we have a good enough management interface that people won't go in raw and maybe won't even be able to find the directory, won't just go in raw. I mean, if somebody sees it's the, Wolfram language local object store, oh, I found it on my hard drive, it's big. Maybe we should have a README right in that directory that says, hey, you can go manage this directory by using the local object store management function. That would not seem to me stupid. To just say, this is not really a user, this is not an area. I mean, there's plenty of places, you can go to dev kmem, or what is dev kmem called these days? Is it still called that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Oh, the kernel memory that's in the file system. Is it not called that anymore? It used to be called /dev/kmem back in the day. And you can go and start monkeying with that file, but that's your working memory for your operating system kernel. It's never going to end well.
Right. Yeah. That sort of thing is sort of not really allowed anymore because security.
Yes. Well, okay, fair enough.
I realize I'm on the losing side here, but I will make one last argument in favor of documents, which is, when you write, when your OS says, you're running low on disk, here are some places you might want to clean up. I think they probably look in documents. They don't look in library because that's a hidden directory.
I'm sure they look in library.
Unless they specifically look in caches, which are safe to delete.
Well,
I'm not sure any OS. I've never had maybe I've used Windows in a long time. Maybe Windows does that. At least on Mac and Linux, though, I think usually they just give you a dialogue that just sort of says, just delete some things. And usually you're sort of left to using your own programs, and usually those programs scan everything.
I thought they had something that said, these files are using a lot of memory. I think I've seen that on Mac.
I know they have things like that for when you run out of RAM. It brings up a dialogue to it says pick a program to quit.
Yeah. Right. No, I've seen it for disk as well. But
it's available from the Apple menu.
Okay, but so does it look in library or does it not look in library?
I'm not sure.
I bet it looks there. Well, we can determine the answer to that. That's something we should know. And, I agree that if it's deeply, deeply, deeply hidden, we might want to consider a different place for the local object store too. I don't think so. I really don't think so. Okay, that's a different issue. I mean, and we should have management of the local object store. We should have some way that, I don't know, if you say, about in the about box or something, we could have something that says this is the amount of space. I don't know whether anybody ever looks there, but we could at least have something that says, this is the amount of space being used by the local object store. Wouldn't seem stupid to me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly useful as well for users to specify how much they would like us to use in their local store.
Exactly, right.
Well, yeah, but what happens when they, put something into a local object that exceeds that? I mean, how are you going to enforce that in any?
Well, I'll tell you.
But then go manage, right? That's when we suggest go manage your local objects.
Right. It will bring up. Look, we're hoping to have asynchronous notifiers be able to come up in notebooks, and it would say, with big flashing lights, it would say, you're overrunning your local object store. Go manage it.
Okay.
All right. Let's loop back here to. Okay, so it is my strong suggestion that we take all audio and video and put it in the local object store and never spray files.
Well, no, we can't do that. I mean, if you're talking about auto-generated files, fine. But right, users will download their own audio that they'll want to play.
Sure, they can put wherever they want, right? then they're referring to it. Okay, so let's consider all these cases. All right. Case number one, they recorded the audio with audio capture or something, or they. Where does audio come from typically? Let's say somebody's going to. I think audio capture will be fairly common, but where
podcast.
I would say files are way more common because audio capture doesn't have a super advanced recorder interface.
Okay, so how do you get that file? You don't do an import, right? Because import would bring it into memory.
You just type in file and then it'll complete the path for you as you type.
Okay, wherever you put it.
But import as well. Import has the mode that just gives you the audio of a file name rather than importing the data in.
Okay, fine. Okay, so then import can take what that file name is and copy it or something, I don't know exactly what it should do, to the local object store. Well, maybe that's wrong. That's
a bit extreme.
Yeah, that's silly. Okay, but look, listen. The thing that I think is important is you're using an audio file that is somehow local, okay? That's in your documents directory or whatever else, okay? You don't know that it just looks like, oh, it's it's a file, okay? Then you send the notebook to your friend and they can't get the audio and everybody's annoyed. So the thing I would suggest is that we indicate that it is not, it's not a globally accessible location somehow. It's neither, if it's in the notebook, see what I'm saying? So there's two cases.
Yeah, something that it is not shareable.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than non-reconstructible on this specific machine. This is what I was saying, that we have two flavors of things with the summary box and audio. One, the issue is sharing, and the other one is reconstructing in general, even on your own machine.
Okay, fine.
Right. You quit the front end, and then when you reopen your file the next day, it's like, oh, the result of your 5-hour computation is gone because you didn't store it or whatever.
Right. Okay. So let's okay.
Right.
So let's zoom out for a second what we're trying to do. So we're trying to get wording as uniform as possible. Okay, first of all, we've got these menus. Okay. So basically the items in the menus are embed in line in notebooks, store in local object, store in cloud paren public, store in cloud paren private.
Yep.
Okay. Now this phrase, data not in notebook.
Right. That needs to be changed, right?
Yeah, that needs to be changed.
That's data not saved, data not stored, something like that.
Okay, so let's think about this. Okay.
And again, I think that the two flavors will be reflected in that sentence.
Okay, but how about data not permanently saved?
I mean, for audio, that is not true, right? The data is permanently saved.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're only talking about the summary box case, right?
Okay, yes.
Let's
talk
about that case for a second. I mean, do you think it's enough to say data not saved, save now? I mean, in other words, the data is in the kernel. It's just not saved anywhere.
Correct.
Maybe the word is embed or something.
Yeah, but the problem is it isn't embedded. It might be in the cloud.
I guess maybe it's embedded in the cloud.
Right. Right.
Yeah, okay,
Originally, this wording made sense because the only option was the first one. It wasn't in the notebook, and you could stick it in the notebook. Now that we have 3 other options.
Okay, let me take another case. Okay, you've saved it, but you've saved it in a private cloud object. Then you send this notebook to your friend. They don't have access to the private cloud object. They're toast.
Well, I mean, I don't. Yeah. So.
Well, how about one other point is, data not persistent. Save now. Ugh, store now. See, I'm worried that people think that within this session, if we say data not saved, save now, that people will think even within this session, it isn't.
I see.
We've got the whole notion of persistent objects, which is basically what we're using here. Is there any language we can get from that?
We could, I mean, it's going to be a bit verbose, but we could do something like data. My train of thought derailed. Sorry, I thought I had something, but something along the lines of, it's session local data only in session, save permanently.
How about data not permanently saved? Save now.
I'm fine with that.
Permanently saved sounds a bit like if you do permanently save it, it's going to be etched in stone.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, but what's the problem with just saved? I mean, data not saved.
Yeah.
Right.
You have a Word document that says data.
Right. Especially since you're going to say there's a save now. So clearly it's still available. It's just not. I think people understand the difference between a saved file and an unsaved file.
All right. I got one visual suggestion. How about we make this italic? Just a small visual suggestion, because it feels like it's a different kind of communication than this one up here.
Oh, that's why it's a different color and different font.
All right, okay. Just a suggestion. I might be wrong.
We do have Jeremy and Billy here as well.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, they can have an opinion about this. They're probably not paying it any attention.
I was, but you were off screen. Well, on my view, because I was 100%. What were you pointing to?
I'm
That one.
pointing to this piece here. Change that data not saved, save now, and making that italic.
I think italic would be fine. Which one's not italic though? Which case? Or they?
None of them. None of them. I'm
Okay,
saying the
good.
stuff
All
up
right,
above is
fine.
not italic.
Yeah,
I'm saying
yeah.
there's different communication down here.
I think italic would be fine.
I'm not sure what it means for this. Maybe that should be italic as well, which actually would help me. I would like that because it's confused me that this is sort of like content and it isn't content. Okay.
How about when this data is available, like data only accessible in this session, kind of like we have persistence language, rather than not
Yeah, a couple of
saved?
people on our live stream are suggesting this. Data will expire when session ends. Persist ? I would prefer a statement that session data unsaved. I think that's hard to understand. I mean, I think it's one of those things where once you understand it, but you don't understand it when you first see it. Okay, Harry is making an interesting comment here about a notebook level dialogue that says, is there anything in this notebook or some other indicator? I mean,
So there's a separate project about that, and I don't want to get sidetracked by that right now.
Okay, but I'm just going to make the point.
Because we've only gotten through the one of the 4 bullet points.
Okay, fine. But I mean, I'm just going to make the point that might suggest that we might want some kind of footer information here about there being unsaved things in the, I mean, just like we have the bit up here that shows that there's stuff that isn't saved, that the actual notebook content isn't saved. There could be a thing, and that's a John question, how that might work. Maybe we want something over here that's some kind of, flash, little thing that looks like one of those, notebook is dirty type indicators that indicates that.
So Parth has been working on a more general concept of a per notebook notification system. And I think this potentially fits with, I mean,
when would the notifier come up?
I'm sorry?
When would the notifier come up? When you press save?
Well, I mean, there would be some, that's part of what he's figuring out, but there would be, some, I mean, like operating system level notifications, there would be some weak sort of notification that's like, hey, a thing happened, now I'm going to go hide myself. But I'll leave a little,
I don't see the trigger. I don't see the trigger unless it's on save. See what I'm saying? I mean, you could trigger on save. Every time you press save, there could be a little notifier that comes up saying this has unsaved things.
Well, I mean, I mean, the trigger can be just the production of the thing in the notebook. It's not about whether or not it's saved. It's about whether or not the data's in the notebook, right?
I'm aware, but it's already telling you it's not in the notebook when you produce it. So the
right.
whole point is,
yes, but you have to be looking at that spot on the screen. You might it could have been produced inside of a closed cell group. It could have been produced in a notebook that's a mile high.
So my suggestion is, number one, it could notify on save, and number two, that we consider some little piece of iconography that indicates there are unsaved things in the notebook. My suggestion. Let's move on from there. Can you communicate that at least as a suggestion?
Yeah. I mean, my one reservation is I don't want to have for us to grow 10 different types of notifications for 10 different types of events. I'd like to.
I completely agree. I'm just saying I think this is an untriggerable notification. There are plenty of notifications that are triggerable where I 100% agree. It's going to be a little notifier in the corner of the screen, and that's all there is.
Okay.
So that's that part. So we've got I think we should try data not saved, save now as the
Yep, that's fine.
okay. Then we've got a menu there.
Yep,
And-
which we'll need to add one cloud item.
Yes. Embedded inline in notebook seems a fairly non-stupid thing to say as one of the save items. I like that. Okay, that looks good. Okay, let's look at audio now. Okay, so where's the data not saved in? Oh God, we have no indication of that.
Because it is saved.
I know. So why don't we say?
And so that's where
And on hover, I think we say that.
Before we dig into this, maybe you should look at because they're working on an audio redesign. So maybe you should click on the links at the top that take you to.
Oh, for goodness sake. Okay. Is that the one?
Yep.
Okay, so what am I looking at here?
Right.
The top part is unification or making it more similar to the video GUI, but the bottom part is an effort to unify the storage problem.
Right, and so you see how it sort of very explicitly states what sort of data is backing it.
I mean, I'm thinking about this iconography because it's kind of silly. Well, if it's in a cloud object already, it's like, oh, you're going to save it somewhere else as well.
Well, you might want it within the notebook if you're sharing it with someone with no internet access or something like that.
Or you just feel like it's.
Well, then what are you going to do in this case here where it's, okay, so we got to discuss this. In this case here where it is in the cloud, what does it say when this is in the cloud?
It says that it's stored in the cloud. So you can go ahead and click on it and see what happens.
And here, if I say store in cloud.
Yep.
I'm sending all kinds of crud to the cloud.
And what are the permissions, default permissions for this?
Public in that case, and there's a private cloud case, and that's the different case that we were.
Are you sure that is by default in the public one? I am.
Lou?
Well, okay, I don't know.
I don't think so. And this is why we have the
know.
public one in the audio one.
Perhaps
I
it's.
think the motivation for the sparse array was, again, for the same user to make this available in different sessions. Instead, the audio, if for audio, the motivator is be able to share with other people.
Both. So I think this should be changed to follow exactly the wording here. Data stored in cloud, just cloud, paren public, data stored in cloud, paren private. That's what I think. And if you want more information, like where was it actually stored, there should be some clickaroo here where you can get the information on where it's actually stored.
I believe that is exactly what you do.
Okay. Well, I mean, okay. So, but there's got to be a UX indication there that you can get that. This is copy to clipboard. Fine. That's a reasonable way to get it out.
The public private could be easily confused with permissions. I'm worried about that.
It is permissions.
It's not private cloud versus
No.
public cloud with private permissions.
No.
Okay. The dotted line looks like the private cloud logo.
Oh, I think that comes from a misunderstanding between Billy and me then.
Okay.
Because I was talking about
Should be a lock
Steven
icon
is
or something.
talking, and evidently Billy had
Okay, fine. Misunderstanding. Let's fix it.
I agree. A lock icon would be great there.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Now, I mean,
What about
there
the
is the
local object
question.
case?
What's that?
What about the local object case?
You mean what's the iconography?
You said no. You said that we shouldn't say cloud object. We should just say cloud. We can't do that in the local objects.
Well, you could say stored in local object. Rather than, I'm just saying, don't use the actual, symbol name thing. Well, we could do that. I don't know. It's okay, except that I'm worried about the fact that this public versus private. I'm also concerned.
Well, what about when we say private cloud object, or just add the public and private either as a parenthetical or as an adjective in front of cloud object?
We shouldn't add it as an adjective in front of a camel case.
Okay.
Camels don't like adjectives. At least that's my theory. But let me see. What was I going to say? I am a little worried about private clouds and other permissions, structures. And I'm wondering if there should be look, I think there should be a thing down
can
at the
you be
bottom.
Connected to more than one cloud at a time? I mean,
can be.
Just go to whatever.
Yes, but here's what I think we should do. I think we should have some escape valve here where you can just say where you want it stored. You can type a file name, you can type a cloud name, all those kinds of things. But you can just type a URL, a URI, basically, where you want things stored. Just to select or something to decide where to store it. Probably not used very often, but from time to time it will be very useful because you don't want to have to, that way you can.
I mean, honestly, at that point, what is the advantage over export file name, %?
Just cleanliness in the notebook, which I've certainly wanted many times. It's cleaner in the notebook. It's nice to be able to have something in the notebook just points off to where you want it to point. Let's try and get UX for that, okay? And let's go look over here. And
by the way, we don't support for front-end operations, we don't support multiple simultaneous cloud connections
yet, right?
Okay. Well, it's yet is true, but it's also true that I mean, there's so much work behind it, and the motivation, the prioritization of that work is unclear.
Yeah, not necessary right now. Okay, so I think this is very unclear. Having this here and well, I wouldn't say integer 16. That's a micro.
Yeah, sure. That can be.
Just don't do it.
That we don't need.
So you're saying just have data and notebook, full stop.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it was a way to try to get a little bit more distinguishability without having the whole picture there.
I'm still concerned about this, that it's completely unclear what that's about. I mean, really what this is change location.
Right, and so the right, which right, it has a
oh, it says change storage location. Amazing.
Right.
I mean, it feels like this should just be uniform with this other stuff. Data stored in cloud, paren public, data stored in cloud. Here, data stored in local object. Now, the one case that's special, data stored in notebook. Okay, those are all exactly the same. The one case that's special is the random file. In which way, because why not just say data in : and then the name of the file? Or just file : and then the name of the file. That's my suggestion. That makes sense?
How would that be different than just file ... and file name?
I'm just saying to make it uniform in terms of the thing with saying data stored in notebook, right? You just say, it's like saying just file colon and then the name of the file. I just think it's more human readable than the other case. Okay.
So what are we showing in the cloud object case? Now you've lost me. So in the cloud object case, what are you suggesting?
Data. Well, what do we say here? We say data stored in cloud, I think is what we should say. Something like that. Or possibly we can align that to say.
That's what I was going to ask.
If it's too short, we'll just say data in cloud. Whoops. Or stored in cloud, what do you prefer?
I think the shorter the better, just to make it fit in the smallest amount of possible space.
Well, do you like data in cloud or stored in cloud?
I think data in cloud is my vote, but
fine. Sounds fine to me.
So the counter argument to this and for the current design proposal was that this allows you to differentiate, as Ita was saying, between audio objects. If they are backed by different cloud objects, you get at least a snippet of the name of the cloud object, so you'll be able to tell. So that is the advantage of.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't mind. There's a way to figure that out, anyways. So.
Well, I mean, you could argue that for these other things as well. The reason we're not arguing that for these other things is because every one of these other things has some information about what it is.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I could argue. Let me follow your argument for a second, okay? I've got two sparse arrays, each of size 1 million, right? The fact is they're different and they are stored at different UUIDs. But I cannot see that without seeing the UUID. Do I care?
That's fair. And hovering over the whatever text will give you a preview of the waveform. And
yeah, okay, but I mean, maybe I do care. Maybe it is worth seeing a piece of the UUID. What do other people think? Anybody? Comments?
Right. I like the idea of seeing at least part of the UUID, and right, with high probability, I could, I could at least tell if they're the same or not. Right. I might not be.
Well, then maybe we should put the UUID here, piece of the UUID here, and then we could put in parens public.
Mm-hmm.
And if we need to align, we could just say data in cloud object.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then paren public. And then here we'd say data in cloud object, blah, 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 paren public. I think we can just say file colon, because I think it's obvious that that's a stored in, and I think it's worthwhile to give a bigger part of the file name there. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, anything else we need to figure out here?
There are two things. One is
some things about camels, cases, titles. What?
Well, yes, there's one thing about, but let's do with the simpler one, which was the font, right? So when you first evaluated big data equals blah, right, the font was gray. And you asked in some meeting, which didn't involve any of the people who are relevant, why is it gray? And well, the short answer is because you said so. But the slightly longer answer is because it's not interpretable. So when you evaluate those first two inputs, you'll see that the font of the output size limiter is gray, and the font of the head of the sparse array is gray. And then once you store the data somewhere, those two fonts turn black.
But it doesn't look gray to me. What's gray? Where's something gray?
the font of the text, the
Here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, maybe you're not calling that gray, but I guess it was not black, and you asked why.
Wow. Coolosaurus. I mean, I didn't. Yeah, I mean, we were being very clever.
Yeah,
Perhaps too clever.
right. And the same thing would happen with the sparse array. So you see right now the head is
Yeah, I get it.
is black, but when you first evaluated it
Oh, that's really subtle. Look, my suggestion
except since version 9, right, we've used the color of the head to indicate whether it's interpretable or not. Right. I mean, it's something we've done consistently.
No, it's fine. I'm not making a big fuss about that. I think I was just frustrated because I found it hard to read one of these big, because we've gone to smaller font. Is it a gray font here as well as being gray background?
Yeah, it's not black. It's dark, dark gray.
There's also a gray dotted outline that becomes solid.
I would suggest just going a little bit lighter at the background, a little bit darker with the font, and then everybody's going to be happy. Okay. I just want to make it not unreadable, because I had a case where I just couldn't really read it.
Okay.
Okay, that was that. Now we've got some casing.
Right, and I think we're mostly okay. So all of these, sort of store now simple interfaces.
Yeah, I think it just
caps.
Yeah.
Then menus and context menus use title case.
Yep.
The one problem case I found was the image editor toolbar, which
part of that?
Right.
Which I would recommend we'll just look at it and fix it. But Itai suggested maybe we can come up with some rules.
Right. So for example, why is that more ... lowercase?
Well,
the last tab.
I don't mind it being lowercase.
I like that one being lowercase. Yes.
That's an icon, not text.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Right. So buttons, they all used title case except for 2 that I found.
I think action buttons should use title case. I think things that are more commentary oriented should use initial caps.
And then titles, like as you flip through those tabs, I think titles of those sections as well, camel cased or title case.
Title case. Yes, I think that's reasonable.
Right.
That's reasonable.
Yes, although yes, the one interesting inconsistency I found there is that the tooltip for the more is initial case more tools and actions, and the actual title once you click on it is capital actions and tools.
I don't think that's too horrifying. What's more horrifying is that there's an extra space before the ampersand there.
Yep.
It's horrifying.
And yes, and then once you click on it, you'll see that there are some things with no cap.
Why am I seeing? Why is this being obstructed at the top? What's happening there?
Oh, that seems like a bug.
Yeah, there's something wrong there.
Yeah.
This doesn't bother me much, that the mouse over is a slightly different capitalization.
Right. And then I'm just pointing that all of these entries here are all lowercase, which maybe they should be. I
think they look fine. I mean, honestly, I think this looks fine.
Okay.
All right. Let's just try and hit one more thing. And then is this easy? Or is this
I think it's easy, but I am out of here in 10 minutes, one way or the other. So
yeah, same here. So
okay, so the issue is that we want to have a minor feature extension to item, where item can take a margins option, and this would be entirely equivalent to embedding a pane with the same margins inside the item and with alignments
Sounds sensible to me. I think item is a good holder for things like that.
Yeah, and this was a thing that Carlson had asked for to simplify the box structure for a data set, for example. So
I like it.
Now the question is what to name the option. We've often used frame margins for this sort of thing, but this isn't quite a frame. If we called it frame margins, you might think that like in a grid box that it would stretches all the way to the edge of the frame, but
why do we call it item margins?
And so item margins was
that's the thing
the
that's
alternative
at the top
proposal.
here. Right. Okay.
Yes. And if you're happy with the name item margins, I mean, I'm just that manipulate is just illustrating how spacings and this proposed thing are really,
I think it's useful.
Very different animals. Spacings are spacings around dividers. They are not margins on individual items, which is why you'll note that when you change the spacings, it changes symmetrically. It's really a divider spacing. It's not like, margins for, a row or column or something like that.
This is the margins of the item. This is the spacing of the between the rows.
Okay. And you could do item spacings on the whole grid? Or can you?
So spacings is a grid level option. Nothing is changing there. I'm just illustrating.
Jeremy is asking, could you
item
margins at the top level and have it percolate down? And the answer should be yes.
So that's, it's a thing that we could do. But to be clear, if we did, it would act in this way, which is to say it would add to spacings.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. There's no other way to puff out I like the idea of having this. I mean, we have size. Don't we have an item size option?
We do have an item size option. Yes.
Right. So there's two different things. There's the puff out, which is the margins, and there's the item size, which is the locking the whole thing in terms of size.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the interaction?
Is the item size then tied around the 5? Or
right in this example, the item size is automatic.
Right, but if we were to set an item size, what?
Yeah, I believe it is. So your question is essentially, does item sizing does it include spacings or exclude spacings? I think it excludes spacings, but honestly, I don't remember 100% for certain.
Okay.
But I mean, the item size will be the literal size of this box in the grid, right? If I say item size is whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so then the only question is if there are item margins there and you specify great big item margins, but the item size is too small, what happens?
Then it gets squeezed in until it just doesn't. The item size has primacy, I think.
Yeah, but the question is the item content here. Does it still try to maintain the item margins, thereby crushing the inner content?
Yes. Yes. If you specified a margin greater than the size, or greater than half the size, because it's coming in from multiple directions, then you'd end up with a thing that looks empty.
So it's kind of lower priority. The actual content in the middle is lower priority than the margins.
Yeah.
It's not obviously correct, but
it is how, what I'm describing is how pain works.
It seems reasonable to me. This item margins idea seems reasonable to me. Okay,
should we have a default setting there? Is it default 0 or is there some other value?
The default would be 0. Yes.
Because what we're seeing here is not very nice. The left and right that crashes into the edge, which happens by default, that's not nice at all.
Well, it's like plot margins. What's the default value of plot margins? It's not 0, is it?
The plot margins, there isn't a plot margins.
What do you mean there isn't a plot margins?
Do you mean plot range padding?
Oh yeah, plot range padding. Yeah, okay. Which is a different concept. Okay, so this plot range padding, how does that relate to a possible, I mean, okay.
Right, because plot range padding is really talking about the range, right? It looks at the numbers that are the range, and they add some fraction to that, or possibly a fixed number, but typically some fraction of that.
Okay,
Right.
so if you want to see the current interaction, which maybe isn't entirely correct, of in pane of frame margins and image size, I just put an example in chat. And this does not exactly obey what I said, and I'm not sure that this is correct. So the ABC disappearing, I would defend, but then the thing getting larger, I'm not sure I would defend. I think image size should probably take precedence over the margins.
Should. Image size should never violate image size, in my view.
Yeah. But aside from the changing image size, this is the behavior that I would propose, and it would be consistent for all boxes that have these kinds of option settings.
One thing we still need to work on is all the graphics grid, all the padding and graphics grids and so on. Brett isn't here, is he? No.
I am.
Oh, you are. Okay. By the way, the bug, some random bug with plot labels in graphics grids, which is still not fixed.
Okay.
Been there for many years and needs to get fixed. Okay, but what I've wanted to do, and maybe we can't do this right now, obviously. I think we need some kind of summit about padding in all things, whether it's in graphics grid, in plot with axes, whether it's in each of these things, because Jeremy is also commenting here that grid with no padding isn't very pretty, right? That image margins arrow 0, if that's the default, isn't very pretty.
Oh, well, spacings. It's the spacings that I overrode. It is spacings is not 0 by default.
But somehow this crushes into, this, because it's the latest, option on the block, this one seems to get precedence, which is not obviously correct.
Oh, no. Spacings, what I'm saying is spacings and item margins add together. Which is why I'm trying to make that clear in the manipulate by coloring the pane box with gray.
But here, why is this thing crashing into the left?
Because I set spacings. Look at the spacings option in the input.
Yes. Okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah, because I explicitly set it to 0. If it was automatic, it wouldn't crash. I just set it to 0 for illustrative purposes.
Okay. I need to go. You need to go. I think we need to wrap up here. And
with 1 minute to spare, John.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That makes me happy.
Okay.
We'll have to deal with the round and min next time.
Yep.
Sounds good. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a lot,
Great.
guys. Thanks to folks on the stream. See you all soon.